Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Money and Change. My name is Ira Robinson. As always, we're here with Stu Shear. Hello, Stu.
Hi, Ira. How are you doing today?
Doing well, other than try number 2.
Yeah, I know. Somebody's trying to get into my system here. We had to totally shut down and then reboot and reset everything. It was kind of crazy. Oh, well, that's what happens, when you do Skype radio, I guess is what we'll call it. Well, anyhow, it's take 2 in beautiful, sunny Ohio. I don't know what it's like up in Fort Wayne, but it's nice and about 41 degrees and beautiful blue skies, light clouds. I mean, it's nice out. Spring's just around the corner, maybe. Maybe we'll go find that groundhog and strangle him. I don't know.
Spring has sprung, but we're not sure where it went.
Yeah, I've got a picture of a groundhog, and he's holding something up, and it says, "I lied." You might want to look for that in the next Wrinkle City Gazette. Anyhow, we've got some shout-outs today before we get started. Rusty Ducks Custom Pens. That's RUSTYDUK''S. Rusty Ducks Custom Pens on Facebook. I mean, this guy does some fantastic work. I bought a pen from him the other day. I talked about it on the last show. I mean, it is really a nice writing pen. Another shout out to www.findlay.edu at the University of Findlay, and I am in mourning. They went to the Sweet 16 in basketball, NCAA Division II, and they lost. So it's back to the drawing boards for next year. But still, the University of Findlay is a very good school located in Findlay, Ohio. Very good professors, nice campus, great students, good facilities. Good place to go. Another shout out to Show Us, Don't Tell Us with Skills and Mike. And I talk to those guys at least once a week, if not more. And we are constantly sending emails and stuff back and forth together between us. And it's fantastic. Big shout out to the LNM Radio Network and Michael Vera. And we've been working with them for about 4 years now, which is fantastic. Open Eyes Network. Hey, I know somebody that works for Open Eyes.
Gee, I wonder who that might be.
Somebody that likes to write a lot of books.
Indeed. Yeah, and actually I've been writing a lot of short stories here lately just to get some practice in with my new best friend, my new toy, my free write. And yeah, it's been pretty fun. I've been putting them up on the website for people to be able to read for free. That's over at originalworlds.com.
Wow. And I can only do 9 pages a month for the Wrinkle City Gazette. Only 9 pages. I don't see how you could do that.
It takes some time.
I know, and I keep saying that, every show. I mean, you'd think I could sit down and do all the writing, but I do all the research for the show, and I don't really have time to do a lot of creative writing, except usually for a couple days during the month to come up for the Wrinkle City Gazette. Well, we had something happen this last week. We have FM 101.7 in Columbia, South Carolina is carrying the show.
Indeed, yeah.
Will wonders never cease?
We'd like to welcome all of our listeners from Columbia. We're a couple of crazy guys, but hopefully you guys will get a little bit out of what we have to bring you.
Hey, and they thought I was crazy till they found out I was insane. All righty. Well, so much for the shout outs. And again, we'd like to welcome FM 101.7 in Columbia, South Carolina, as well as the people listening on LNM Radio Network and Open Eyes Network. And oh, by the way, we forgot one thing. We're also on YouTube.
Indeed. Yeah. YouTube.com/C/Open Eyes Network is the channel that you guys can go to and watch us.
And you can also get us on moneyandchange.weebly.com. That's moneyandchange.weebly.com. And a lot of the things that we talk about on the show are also posted on the website. and we've got a lot of information up there. We talk a lot about different things: money, national debt, being prepared, depression living. We have preparedness articles, what to do after disaster. And we have some humor up there, which is the Wrinkle City Gazette. And we'll get to that towards the very end of the show. Now, before we start, we always do a disclaimer. So the information contained in this presented material is from the posting of news agencies on the internet and are not necessarily the views or opinions of the owners of this program. We are not responsible for and expressly disclaim all liability for damages of any kind arising out of use, reference to, or reliance on any information contained in this broadcast. The information provided is not offered as financial advice, financial planning, or for investment purposes, so you want to use this information at your own risk. Now, from the currency chart at xe.com today at 405, the euro gained a penny on the U.S. dollar. It's now up to $1.07. The Great British Pound is up 2 cents to $1.23. The Australian dollar took a jump to 76 cents to the U.S. dollar. The Canadian dollar is at 74, and it stayed the same for the last 4 weeks. The Swiss franc, hey, it's above parity with the U.S. dollar. It's $1.003. So the Swiss franc is now a little bit above parity to the U.S. dollar. The Japanese yen, hey, it went up just a little tick. It's at 0.88 cents to the dollar. That's 0.088. Not much of a move. Chinese yuan, well, it dropped a tenth, and it went down. It's 14.4. Chinese yuan to the dollar, or cents to the dollar. The Kuwaiti dinar is at 327. If you're holding Vietnamese dong, well, guess what? The wheelbarrow got a little bit lighter. It's now at 22,695.63 dong to the dollar. Bitcoin, hey, we keep talking about Bitcoin and being as wildly fluctuating as it can be. Last week it was $1,227.56 for one Bitcoin. Today it's down to $1,189.32 to the Bitcoin. If you want to speculate in it, go right ahead. You're going to waste a lot of electricity and time and computer. I'm still not sold on it. It just varies too much. Gold, hey, the value of gold went up. Last week it was $1,204.87. It's at $1,226.50 an ounce. Silver, last week it was $17.04. It went up. It's on its way back up to $18. Right now it's $17.32 an ounce. Platinum, it also went up. It's $957.50 an ounce. Palladium is at $767.49 an ounce, and it went up too. When we have times of difficulty and trouble, people like to put their money into gold, silver, and other precious metals. Why? Because it's a hedge. Now, like I always tell people, I've told them for 4 years now, pay down your debt, put some money aside, get some long-term food, be able to store water and be able to purify water. Also, go ahead and make sure you have plenty of medication, and also make sure you have vitamins on hand for any type of catastrophe. If you don't, and we have a crash, you'll wish you did, and it would be too late. Now, I'm not saying we're going to have one. I've heard that, yes, things may happen. When? Nobody's saying. Nobody knows. Well, if they know, they're not saying. So I think what we have to do is prepare. And, there's only so much place you can store things. Well, try to prepare the best that you can. Try to have enough food, water, and so forth on hand for at least a minimum of 3 months. Do you have heirloom seeds? You want to get heirloom seeds so you can plant them in your garden. Why? Because you can reuse those seeds year after year.
And they're on the cheap right now since it's coming into spring and time for planting. There's a lot of sales going on seeds and stuff, so you can find them real cheap right now.
Gee, where would you get them?
Funnily enough, we get them from Menards. They sell heirloom seeds there that are really good, and Jolene goes and picks them up since she works there. She can just grab them while she's at work. So,
well, now, I go to Patriot Supply.
That's a good one too, yeah.
And they have seed vaults and so forth. But that's one of the things that you really need to consider anymore. Because, in a depression, what do? How do you eat? You have to grow your food. It may not be available if things shut down for any reason. Grocery stores only hold about 3 days supply anyhow. And the
heirlooms are important because without the heirlooms, most of the non-heirloom seeds, for those that don't know the difference, most of the non-heirloom seeds are designed with not being able to go to seed in mind. So when the time comes for that plant to go to seed, as it normally would, to allow you to collect the seeds and plant them again later, they won't actually ever go to seed. They'll not reach that point. So you won't be able to reuse those seeds. You'll have to keep buying from that company over and over.
Well, that's why I get some seeds from Belchies. I won't say burpees. It's more or less a belch. The heirloom seeds, I kind of save those. They're good for 5 years, in the vault. When you take them out of the vault, then you really have to use them. So that's what I do. But, if you're not preparing, please start. Good grief. One of these days, the markets are going to crash, and you're going to say, gee, where'd my money go? Well, not my problem. You didn't invest in gold and silver and other precious metals. You didn't put some money aside. You didn't put some food aside. And then they'll say, well, I'll just come over to your place. Guess what? My stuff isn't stored on site. Only I know where it's at. So don't come looking for me. Well, let's get into currency here. We just finished talking about that, but remember Iceland? And they had their currency problems and the banks and everything else. And the prime minister told everybody, well, we can always go fish. Well, what did they do? They took the corrupt bankers and they took the corrupt politicians and they put them on an island somewhere. And they said, okay, you're here for 10, 15 years until you can repent. By the way, go fish. Well, anyhow. There was a report that came out in ICE News, and it said currency restrictions on the Icelandic krona completely lifted. And from today onwards, there will be no limits on currency transactions with the Icelandic krona. The private sector and institutional investors, such as the Icelandic pension funds, are now able to invest in foreign currency once more and to transfer funds in and out of the country without the restrictions that came to be in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis in Iceland. The value of the Icelandic krona, or the IKR, dropped briefly by about 3 to 4% yesterday after the government announced the final stage in the complete lifting of the capital controls, which were enforced in the wake of the 2008 financial collapse. Well, the flourishing tourist boom in Iceland in recent years has resulted in steady strengthening of the Icelandic krona, or the ISK, and in the past months, economic growth and substantial surplus in the balance of payments has reinforced the currency further. However, the export industries in the country have been calling for a devaluation of the ISK to improve their competitiveness. I had friends that went to Iceland, and they went in the fall. And I asked my friend Bob, I said, well, why are you and Evie going up to Iceland? He said, oh, we just wanted to see what it's like up there. And they had a great time. And they said, oh, the fjords and the mountains and the volcano and the hot pool that's there, it was fantastic. They had a very great time. But take some money with you because it's not a cheap place to stay.
No.
And their national thing in Iceland, they love hot dogs, all kinds of hot dogs. And well, I'm not an aficionado of hot dogs, but it beats fermented shark fin, and they do that there too. And I don't think I'll be going within 100 feet of any shark fin because I think you can smell it for quite a distance.
Yeah,
You know,
pretty
it's like,
much.
oh, this tastes like 2,000-year-old skunk. Oh, well, you know, our buddies up in Canada, and I do have a few friends up in Canada, beautiful country up there. But I think some Canadian bankers were taking some lessons, maybe, from a bank here in the United States, because an article came out on Zero Hedge about we are all doing it. Thousands of Canadian bankers admit lying to customers to boost sales.
Well, gee, that sounds familiar.
What bank was that?
Little one called, I don't know, maybe somebody out there's heard of it. Wells Fargo?
Oh, the one with the stagecoach?
Riding away with your money?
Yeah. Well, you know, that happened in the States. Well, according to Zero Hedge, it came out again in Canada. Said several days after shares of Canada's TD Bank tumbled following reports that its employees were engaging in practices similar to those which led to a major scandal at Wells Fargo, which cost CEO John Stumpf his job and led to bonus clawbacks and numerous terminations over the practice of cross-selling. Employees from all 5 of Canada's big banks have flooded CBC's Go Public whistleblower hotline with stories of how they too feel pressured to upsell, trick, and even lie to customers to meet unrealistic sales targets and keep their jobs. In nearly 1,000 emails, employees from RBC, that's the Royal Bank of Canada, BMO, CIBC, and TD and Scotiabank locations across Canada describe the pressures to hit targets that are monitored weekly, daily, and in some cases hourly. Management is down your throat all the time, said a Scotiabank financial advisor. They want you to hit your numbers, and it doesn't matter how. And the deluge is fueling multiple calls for parliamentary inquiry, similar to what followed the Wells Fargo revelations. Even as the banks claim they're acting in customers' best interests, CBC reported, adding it has agreed to protect their identities because the workers are concerned about the current and future employment. Man, I'll tell you what, there was a banker, a TD insurance broker in Barrie, Ontario, who wrote in the article, it said, we are straight up told to tell false stories or lie to sell products. And an RBC financial advisor told Go Public, we're all doing it. Now, come on. That's not good customer service. I mean, how could you trust in a bank that's doing that? You know, I pull into the drive-through and I'm depositing money or whatever at my bank. And they say, do you have a moment to stop in? We'd like to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. And I just politely say, well, I can't do it right now. I'm very busy. Thank you very much. Well, we could make an appointment for you right here. No, I don't think so. Like I said, I'm very busy. And then I get the heck out of Dodge as quick as I can. I don't know if it happens to you up in Fort Wayne.
Luckily for us, no, because we use a federal credit union, and they have no drive-through. So,
Oh, well, that's a wise thing not to have drive-thrus. But they do have ATMs, right?
they do indeed. Yep.
Well, that's good. That's good. But, you know, banks have to be upfront with their customers. They shouldn't lie. They shouldn't cheat. Yeah,
Aren't there some regulations against that kind of thing?
well, yeah, there are, but nobody enforces them, at least in the past administration.
Exactly.
In other words, the ex-POTUS. But I think what they need to do is take Alcatraz, and maybe that island is too small, But basically, if you've been a bad banker and you've lied to your customers and you've forced your employees to lie to your customers, maybe you should spend some time on Alcatraz on the island. You know, they could pay the bankers, actually not pay them, but put them there, provide the paint and so forth, and they could redo the entire island.
Sure, they can make
Repaint
it all kinds of
everything.
pretty. They can make it all kinds of pretty.
And they could learn a decent trade. And then once they get out, if they can ever get back into banking, that's one thing. If not, they learn how to paint, do plumbing, electrical, and so forth. Maybe that's a good thought. But maybe Alcatraz is in too nice of an area. Maybe we need to move them up to an island, San Juan Islands between the U.S. and Canada. It gets cold up there. That's where the Indians sentence people for murder. They put them on an island, they give them so much food, and you have to live there for a year. And guess what? The food only lasts a couple months. So can you say we're screwed? You betcha.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, and speaking of being screwed, wow. There was an article that came out from Eric Peters, who's the CIO of One River Asset Management. And Eric said if China and the World Bank are right, we're headed for a depression. You think? Well, according to the article, it said some people blindly invested offshore and were in a rush to do so, explained China's central bank chief, justifying his recent capital controls. Some of this outbound investment was not in line with our own policies and had no real gain for China. No doubt he's right. The tycoons fleeing Chinese capital markets have done so selfishly. So to regulate capital flows, I think it's normal, concluded the central banker. Chinese credit relative to GDP, or gross domestic product, has doubled in the past decade to 300%, which remains less than the U.S. at 350%. But the rate of Chinese credit growth is unsustainable, as it is difficult to reverse without tanking the economy. The tycoons are running from this dynamic because such loops almost always end badly. Well, anyhow, after so many years of secular stagnation fears and global investors are growing to, they're kind of conditioned to run. They've been running away from fear too long, and they've forgotten how to run toward greed, which has left them blindly holding about $10 trillion of bonds, which yield negative interest. Now, this might make sense to a deflationary depression, but the global economy has not seen such strong synchronized cyclical growth in years, according to the report. And they said inflation is likewise firming everywhere. But China lowered its growth target again as the World Bank warned that today's strong global upswing in confidence and financial markets are not enough to pull the world out of a low growth trap. And if they're right, we're surely headed for a depression because all this new debt requires robust economic strength to shoulder the weight. But European debt markets are still largely priced for depression. And with JP Morgan, one of our banks, CEO Jamie Dimons announcing the return of animal spirits in the America's economy, it seems more likely that this cycle ends like every other, with a blind run toward greed. Well, if you look at things, go to the grocery store and write down the prices of things that you use in the outside aisles around the store. That's like bread, produce, dairy, and so forth. Go ahead and write those prices down. Then next week, go back and take a look at those prices. And the week after that, take a look at those prices. You'll find that the prices are going up. Why? It's easy. We've got hidden inflation. Well, gas prices are down. Yeah, because there's a glut. But sometimes with food, you have a problem. Take a look at Venezuela, for example. They had problems with their bolivar. It's almost worth absolutely nothing. Takes wheelbarrows of it to buy anything. People down there can't afford toilet paper, let alone food. I just heard on a radio show earlier this week that they believe that there's cannibalism down there. Wow. And that country used to be really, really nice. People had everything that they wanted, but socialism came in. And as a result, people are starving in the streets. Riots over toilet paper, over food. It's kind of scary. The liberals want to come in and say, oh, we'll give you all this free stuff. And then the free stuff, you say, well, where does it come from? Well, it's got to come out of somebody's pocket. It's also coming out of your pocket. It's coming out of my pocket. And then you get people that don't want to work for it. Now that's scary. And you take a look at economic collapse, it's out there. We're just not broadcasting it in the United States. The major news outlets are not broadcasting what's happening in Venezuela. You have to look outside the United States. There was an article from Mike Snyder in the Economic Collapse blog that came out this week and said $21,714 for every man, woman, and child in the world. This global debt bomb is ready to explode. And he said, according to the International Monetary Fund, global debt has grown to a staggering grand total of $152 trillion. Other estimates put that figure closer to $200 trillion. But for the purpose of this article, let's use more conservative numbers. If you take $152 trillion and divide it by the 7 billion people living on the planet, you get $21,714, which would be the share of that debt for every man, woman, and child in the world if it was divided up equally. So if you have a family of 4, your family's share of the global debt load would be about $86,856. Very few families could write a check for that amount today, and we must also remember that we live in some of the wealthiest areas on the globe. Considering the fact that more than 3 billion, that's with a B, people around the world live on $2 a day or less, the truth is that about half the planet would not be capable of contributing toward the repayment of our $152 trillion debt at all. So they should probably be excluded from these calculations entirely, and that would mean your family's share of the debt would ultimately be far, far higher. Well, of course, the global debt repayment will never actually be apportioned by family. The reason why I'm sharing this example is to show you that it is literally impossible for all this debt to ever be repaid. We are living during the greatest debt bubble in the history of the world, and our financial engineers have to keep figuring out ways to keep it growing much faster than the global GDP, or gross domestic product, because if it ever stops growing, it will burst and destroy the entire global system. Why? Because, guess what, guys? We're structured on debt. You go to get a loan at a bank. Well, how much do you have in reserve? Okay, well, then we can give you this much for your car, this much for your house, and then you're in debt. You're indebted to the bank. According to Bill Gross, one of the most highly respected financial minds in the entire planet, said, our highly levered financial system is like a truckload of nitroglycerin on a bumpy road. Everything might seem fine for a while, but one day we're going to hit that wrong bump at the wrong time, and the whole thing is going to go kaboom. I don't think we'll even hear the boom. We will just hear the ka going off, because then you're dead. The global economy has created more credit relative to the GDP than at the beginning of 2008's disaster. In the U.S., credit of $65 trillion is roughly 350% of the annual GDP, and the ratio is rising. And in China, the ratio has more than doubled in the past decade to nearly 300%. And since 2007, China has added $24 trillion worth of debt to its collective balance sheet. And over the same period, U.S. and Europe only have added $12 trillion each. There's a price to be paid for going into debt. You know, banks, when they take your money in, you deposit $100, they're able to loan out $900. 9 times. That is awful scary. Okay? Very scary. I would say they should be reduced to about 5, if that. You get a crash and you go to the bank and you can't get your money, you're in trouble. If you hold silver and gold certificates, that's pieces of paper, and there's a crash, you're just holding paper. You're not holding physical currency or physical gold or silver. We have to consider that. If you can't hold it in your hand and it's a piece of paper, it's not worth anything. Kind of sounds like fiat money. Is a $20 bill really worth $20? Remember the old days when they used to have a dollar bill and it said redeemable for $1 worth of silver?
Yep.
Or $5 bills that could be the silver certificates is what they were. And they did away with them. I think I still have 1 or 2 hidden away somewhere. But it's scary. You know, we've got the student debt bubble, which is horrendous. We've got car loan bubbles. We've got housing bubbles. Man, it is scary out there. And somebody sneezes the wrong way. And guess what? We're going to be in a depression. Maybe even a recession. Who knows? Then you take a look at your retirement pensions. You know, way back when LBJ said, well, we'll just take money out of the Social Security system. I would say that would almost be criminal, but they allowed him to do it. And they put a whole bunch of IOUs in Parkersburg, West Virginia, in a warehouse, saying the government owes you X amount of money. LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, just screwed everybody in the United States at that point. He stole your money. You take a look at the retirement systems, for example, in Illinois, it's only 13.52% funded. 13.52% funded. And it's down from 17% in 2013. And Illinois has accrued a combined net pension liability of roughly $130 billion on which it assumes a 7% return. The key word there is assumes. This came from Michael Shedlock and mishtalk.com, mishtalk.com. Then there was a post from Michael Lucci, Lucci, at the Illinois Policy Institute. And he said the interest on Illinois' pension debt is $9.1 billion a year. And Illinois isn't covering its interest payments on its pension debt. And those interest payments are $9.1 billion a year. Take a look at Dallas, Texas. The police and fire pension there was about ready to go under. You know, I have a friend of mine that was a police officer in Dallas, and she was part of the investigating section on gang violence in Dallas. She's worried. All of her friends are worried. They were all police officers there. The pension systems could collapse. And if they do, what happens? Everybody's screwed. It's up there. To back that up, Jeff Reeves from MarketWatch.com had an article Collapsing pensions will fuel America's next financial crisis. Said cash-strapped pension funds would leave millions of Americans high and dry in the very near future. He said, case in point, Donald Trump's unrealistic projection that the U.S. economy will grow to 3% this year, when the latest GDP forecasts have actually been reduced to 1.8% by a number of economists. Then you have Social Security. Many politicians are just too intimidated, uninformed, and complacent to tackle the sustainability of Social Security, which by the latest tally we will see its trust fund go to zero in just 17 years from now in 2034. Okay, let's give the politicians some money. They want tax money and so forth. And then what do they do with it? They spend it on frivolous junk. It really upsets me. You take a look at the Michigan Public School Employees Retirement System pension fund is $26.7 billion underfunded and has paid out more benefits than it has actual assets in 41 of the last 42 years. That's not good, people. You know, Social Security was a really good setup after FDR came up with that, what do they call it, pyramid scheme. It worked. It was good. And then when Lyndon Baines Johnson, better known as LBJ, came in, guess what happens? They take the money out of that. What do they use the money for? Well, we'll use the money for the Great Society. We'll use it to buy more stuff for war. That's scary.
The whole of the first Gulf War, or second Gulf War, sorry, was paid for with Social Security. Thanks, politicians.
Yep. And, you know, they keep talking about term limits. I'd consider running them out on a rail after they've been tarred and feathered for some of the stuff that they do. Now, I know there's honest politicians out there. Well, I don't know about honest politicians. I haven't really run into too many of them. There might be some out there, you know. And then we came up with something about Trump's budget cuts. That just came out. And I went to the website and I looked at it. 62 pages of explanation. It's obvious the government hasn't heard of the KISS method. That's K-I-S, and I'm adding an S to it. It's called Keep It Simple, stupid. The KISS method. Let's not have 62 pages of documents on how we're going to cut budgets. I mean, they were going through all kinds of things. The Chemical Safety Board, the funding is eliminated. And what did they do? Investigate causes of chemical accidents. That's a local issue. You could have other people do that. Why pay for it? I can see a reason for that. Corporation for Public Broadcasting. You know, I have a friend of mine that produces shows for public broadcasting. He's been doing it for 25 years. He has to have sponsors. I'll put a plug in for him. The American Woodshop with Scott Phillips. I've known Scotty for years. He does an excellent job on his shows through PBS, but he has to have sponsors to do the show. So why can't PBS have sponsors? You know, it's time to put on the big boy pants here. Then you take a look at the Department of Education. Something about the 21st century community learning centers, you know, before and after school student programs. The Department of Education doesn't need to exist for the United States, in my opinion. It goes back to the states. It's the responsibility of the state under the 10th Amendment to do certain things that are enumerated for the federal government to do under the Constitution, and anything else goes back to the states. The federal government has no business educating. I think what they could do is maybe make it a law that you have to be able to read, write, and know the Constitution and be a functional person in society to graduate, and let the states handle it from there. You know, I mean, let the states handle the Department of Education's duties. You don't need the feds coming in and saying, well, we'll give you money if you do this and teach this way. You take a look at the EPA. Whoa. Talk about a boondoggle. The EPA protection, the Environmental Protection Agency, they write their own laws to exist. It's not passed through Congress. They make administrative rules. It goes out. And I don't know how many they put through a year. Do you have any idea, Ira?
No, I don't.
Seems like to me it's pages and pages and pages and pages. And, oh, you can't do this. Why? Because it says in EPA manual number 5,229 on page number 2,552 that you can't do that. Well, who made up that law? Well, we've got this introvert sitting back in a corner on, you know, maybe the 15th floor in some building back in a corner, and he handles that.
I know in general, like I think on average, there's about 1,500 new regulations that come out from federally speaking every year, but I'm not sure like specifically from you know,
EPA.
which ones in particular get those. Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure how it breaks down, but I know it's in total a ton.
Well, and what they do, they just write rules to exist. It's like, oh, let's see how we can screw them this week.
Yep.
It's almost like the IRS. They do the same thing. You know, 62 pages to write all this stuff. And I was thinking about it today, and I thought, you know, instead I'd require the EPA, the Department of Education, the State Department, HUD, PBS, Department of Energy to take a 20% cut in funding every year for the next 3 years. PBS can seek out sponsors like they normally do anyhow, and all other agencies except DHS and the military would take a 15% cut for the next 3 years. Each department would be required to become efficient in operation and paperwork reduction. Makes sense to me, and I just did that in a paragraph, and it took politicians 62 pages to spell it out. Sometimes I wonder. I mean, who taught these morons? It scares me. I'm going to save something for next week, 16 reasons not to live in California. I'm not going to talk about that because we're running down on some time. And, you know, I developed something over the last week, and I thought, you know, they're talking about the Affordable Care Act, and they're talking about replacing it, and who's going to get screwed, who's going to be without insurance, and so forth. And I thought, let's see if a common person, I think I'm common, could think of something that would be better than what the feds could come up with. And I think I did. You know, everybody has a driver's license. And the state always gets your income tax. And they could take your net and put it on a chip on a driver's license. And you could use that chip to go to the doctor. And instead of having all this federal paper trail you have to go through for Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth, why not come up with a plan I call the AmeriCare plan? That's AMERICARE. And if the Donald is listening, he better listen good. You know, politicians gave us Obamacare, which was a screwed up mess to begin with, and was thrust upon the citizens by the liberals who wanted our healthcare system to be like England's and Canada's, which are inherent with problems. Now, the liberals want to do away with Obamacare And actually, that should be conservatives. I may have to change it. Well, some liberals too. They want to do away with Obamacare and give us a better version of Ryan Care or Obamacare 2, which has a lot of problems. And I have a simple plan called AmeriCare, and it leaves it in the hands of the citizen consumer, not the government. American citizens with a family will pay their doctor under the plan 1.25 or 1.25% of your net income claimed on your taxes, not to exceed $800 a year. This can be done monthly, quarterly, or semi-annually. The doctor then agrees to treat you for your ailments, including minor surgery, bone setting, prenatal, and so forth, without appointment during normal working hours. Medications would be at cost plus 5%. You could even make it cost plus 10% for the doctor or pharmacy. No clawbacks are permitted, and that's where they get extra money out of you. First come, first served. You would need to purchase a family catastrophic insurance plan for hospitalization and treatment of major things like accident care, heart, kidney, liver, surgical trauma, cancer, long-term stay, and so forth. And you'd be able to purchase insurance across state lines. Now, every family participating would be issued an AmeriCare card with your picture and fingerprint that would be good and accepted nationwide. It could be scanned and, if valid, would be accepted by any doctor in the country. If out of state you needed a doctor, you could present the card, have it scanned, and a bill would be sent to the originating doctor's office for reimbursement to the treating doctor. Medicare would still exist as without Medicaid, or as would Medicaid, but with reduced paperwork under a government paperwork initiative. Those on Medicare could opt out of Medicare and pay under the AmeriCare plan. Medicaid recipients would have 1.25% of their EBT or SNAP card deducted to fund Medicaid. Well, what about foreigners? Well, foreigners who visit must provide their own insurance under their country's travel or specialized travel plans, like Canadians do when they visit here or we go abroad. Aliens, illegal or legal, visa or green card, would only get critical care treatment and immunizations as currently exist under the law at a hospital. It's under law. They can do that. If employed, they can purchase insurance through the 1.25% plan with proof of the visa or the green card. I call it AmeriCare. It's a family plan. I'm a conservative who believes in the KISS method. So eat your heart out, politicians. Well, then you take a look at the high-risk people. Well, it's easy. Created an AmeriCare high-risk pool. And single people who are high risk due to drug addiction, alcoholism, STD-induced lifestyle, etc., or other determined high-risk categories would be placed in the high-risk pool, which would incur a higher cost in addition to the standard 1.25% of net income. Those in a risk category would be placed at an additional $800 a year until they were through rehabilitation treatment and dry for a period of 4 years. Should, for any reason, they revert back to the addiction, their cost would increase by an additional $400 a year to $1,200 plus the 1.25% of net income. If you're on Medicare or Medicaid, the penalty would be the same amounts. Families whose members who are on high risk would pay the $800 per year extra to the AmeriCare family plan. Once out of rehab and dry, the fee would be eliminated. Well, then what about the family plan? Well, I thought about that too. You know, American families could pay their doctor 1.5% of their net income and not exceed $1,200 a year. And it could be done monthly, quarterly, or semi-annually. And when seeing the doctor for services, they will pay an additional $20 copay for each visit. The doctor then agrees to treat you for your ailments, including minor surgery, bone setting, prenatal, and so forth, just like in the single plan. Every family participating would get an AmeriCare card with your family picture and so forth on it. AmeriCare would still exist as Medicaid, but with reduced paperwork. That has to happen. The only reason that doctors have such a large staff is that they have to have insurance people to handle Medicare and Medicaid.
That's a whole lot of it. Yep.
I knew somebody that worked for a doctor, and she loved working there, but the paperwork was just horrendous.
It's absolutely ponderous.
Oh, that's a big word. I may have to think about it.
Ponder on that one.
Yeah. Anyhow, you have to reduce the paperwork. Keep it simple, stupid. But the government doesn't think that way, and they need to. They just want to make themselves big so they can make themselves big.
Yeah, I mean,
or bigger.
how hard would it be to enact something that says, "Oh, gee, you did this kind of work, you get this amount of money. There you go. Period. Pff, done."
Right. And it could be on that chip, just like a credit card. And you could have your picture on there. You could have a thumbprint. And you could use that as a voter ID. Here's your driver's license with the AmeriCare stuff already printed on it, front or back, however you want to do it. And you could use that as a voter ID. The only thing is, if you move, you do have to get a new ID. And you could do that at the Department of Motor Vehicles. The DMV is what we call it in Ohio. I don't know what they call it in Indiana.
Yeah, DMV here.
Okay. Or it could be the Bureau of Motor Vehicles or whatever. But you could go and do that. It doesn't take long. And you would have a voter ID. You would also have a driver's license. You would also have an AmeriCare card already on there. It fits right in your wallet. So if you or your kid needs treatment, fine, you take your driver's license, you go into the doctor and you say, here it is. You slide it in their card reader. It says, okay, you made so much, you have to pay so much, you're going to pay on it. Yeah. Okay, here's a check for $800, and you go ahead and give it to the doctor, and then it's credited to the card. You pull your card out, you're done. Or you can make it in payments. But what does that do for the doctor? It reduces the amount of paperwork and the staff that they need to have under Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth. I think it's a good plan. What do you think?
Yeah, I do too. I really don't see many problems with it, to be honest with you. My thing is, as far as the doctors go, their costs, when you go to a doctor visit and stuff, I mean, their costs increase because of the amount of staff that they have. I know after Obamacare was enacted, my doctor's office, in fact, had to hire in 4 more people into the office just to handle the new paperwork that was brought in with Obamacare. So, I mean, and that increased the costs of each doctor visit that you have, because he's got to pay for that staff. It goes to the consumer, just like every other business does, right?
That's right. And you run into things like that, and daggone it, it really, the amount of paperwork that you have to fill out, for example, income tax, and all the different deductions and stuff that they give you. If they say, okay, here's the deal. You have an income tax level of 5% up to a certain amount of dollars you make, 10% above that, and 15 or 20% above that. Let's say you make over $300,000 a year or $400,000 a year, which I'll never see. But you take that and you say, okay, it's either 5, 10, or 25%. Where's all the paperwork? Where's all the deductions? And you take your limits of, well, who has to pay tax? Okay. If you make less than $25,000 a year, you don't pay tax. That's one way of looking at it. Another way would be to have a national sales tax.
That's what I'm all about. I love the idea of a national sales tax, and that would be the coverage. I love that idea, and I think that's something that really should be implemented.
That's right. Everybody pays.
Because that's the fairest way to do it. If somebody doesn't make a lot of money, they're not going to be buying a lot of products. Therefore, they're not going to be paying a lot of taxes, right? If someone is very wealthy, they're likely to buy the much more expensive things. Therefore, they will be paying more amounts in taxes. It's a fair way to do things.
And I'll tell you what, if you exempt food and medical expenses.
Yes. Yeah. And you'd still make enough money to cover everything that the federal government requires to do its thing.
That's right. And I think it would work. So here, we have solved on this program today health care and taxes.
And taxes, exactly.
Man, are we smart or what?
I'm dropping the mic.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we're almost out of time. Hey, people, donate to the show so we can stay on the air and give you more ideas like this. I donate my time and my research to present articles to hopefully stimulate you to think about what's going on with money and things that are going on out there in the world. And I think at least in this show, we have talked about two major things. An easy way for healthcare, and I hope that Donald is listening. The CIA may be listening too. But anyhow, I hope that they're listening on that. And also on taxes. It can be done simpler through the KISS method. Keep it simple. Stupid. Anyhow, hey, aren't the Irish going to be doing something tomorrow?
They are indeed. Yes, we're having corned beef ourselves.
Corned beef yourself. Well, I don't know about that. I'm not a big lover of corned beef and cabbage. But, in Wrinkle City, they're getting ready for a celebration downtown. And you can read about it in the Wrinkle City Gazette at moneyandchange.weebly.com in the humor section. But they had something going on in Wrinkle City I think you better know about. The police went out to Las Vegas to go to a seminar. And they do it every year. And they subcontract to the Sisters of No Mercy. And the Shooting Sisters come into town. And they run the police department. Isn't that a novel thought?
Are they associated with Our Lady of the Iron Underwear?
I don't know, but they're related to the Sisters of the Steel Ruler.
I know them too.
Oh, yes. I have scars on my knuckle from going to Xavier University. Anyhow, Mayor Alton Suey, who's the mayor in Wrinkle City, and the city commissioners voted 4-0 to adjust the city income tax for the city residents and businesses. Councilman Delbert Schmitz was unavailable to vote as he was recuperating in the drunk tank. Well, they agreed an additional charge will be $10 per acre of land owned per month. Well, Vic Lush, owner of several slum properties, told those assembled at City Hall on the night of the vote, "This is highway robbery, pillage, and rape of everyone in the city. I'll just have to raise my booze and prices to fill the city's pockets," he said. A 5-minute brawl broke out in the council chambers after Lush's statement. And Sister Mary Elephant stopped the brawl by swinging her "Come to Jesus" baseball bat and spanking the hands of those involved with her steel ruler. A $150 donation from each person involved in the Donnybrook was made to the charity and missions box. Order was regained and everyone retook their seats. And Vic Lush, who's the owner of Lush's Bar and Grill, said to the citizens afterwards, "Man, that lady smacks a mean ruler," as he exited the council chambers. And that's the information coming from Wrinkle City in the Wrinkle City Gazette. So if you're going to party tomorrow for St. Paddy's Day, make sure you're wearing green. Make sure you don't drink too much green beer. Behave yourself so the Sisters of No Mercy will be after you if you're in Wrinkle City. And with that, that's all I have this week, Ira. We'll get back with you next week with more information. We may talk about AmeriCare some more. I might have some other thoughts. If you want to read about AmeriCare, you can go to moneyandchange.weebly.com and go to the Money and Change blog. It's in there. And with that, Ira, that's all I've got for this week. So I'm wishing everybody a happy St. Patty's Day, and I hope you enjoy your corned beef and cabbage.
Sounds great, Stu. Thanks for everything that you do. Everybody, we will talk to you again next week. Keep safe out there and have fun.